Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another weather forecast and tropical update by Age Weather Forecast. And we have a ton to talk about as we still have a little update on Invest 97 and 98L. As well, keeping a very close eye on that new AOI down there in the Southern Caribbean, which could very well become a threat for areas that got impacted by Grace not too long ago. So we're looking at probably going to start seeing Ida and Julian here before September. So we might start getting into our actual season that we've been predicting for a while here. Finally getting into the actual getting towards the peak here, guys. This is the rising climax of it, as we do have three AOIs, which at least two of them are very likely to form, with the AL just kind of diminishing here. I mean, this is not really a great chance of actually forming, and actually the National Hurricane Center has decreased it. So here's a look at the overall advisory. So 97L obviously has the best probability and it actually may become a hurricane as models are continuing to stay rather consistent with a 20% for 48 hours as conditions are still rather not really necessarily conducive, especially the SSTs. And then formation will be 70% for the next 5 days here. So a broad trough of low pressure is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms over the central tropical Atlantic, almost 1,000 miles east-northeast of the northern Leeward Islands. Low development of the system is expected during the next day or two due while it moves northwestward at about 15 miles an hour over margin conducive ocean temperatures and is affected by strong upper-level winds. Afterwards, environmental conditions are expected to become more conducive for development, and tropical depression is likely to form by the end of the week here. And probably at the point of tropical storm, then hurricane. So 60% now for the new AI down there in the Caribbean, which was a 40% yesterday, a 0.40, and now it's a 10.60. So 10% for the next 48 hours here, and 60% for the next 5 days. So broad area low pressure is expected to form over the southwestern Caribbean Sea in a couple of days from a tropical wave currently located over the central Caribbean Sea. Environmental conditions are forecasted to be conducive for development of the low if it remains over water, and a trough depression can form late this week here or this weekend. So watching out for a very similar time frame for this new AOI, which is still not 99L and then 97L, and then obviously now a 20-30% for 97L, and conditions are just really not necessarily really conducive, and there's a pretty big threat within dry air and overall low positioning as it's quite far south in the MDR. So here's a look here at Invest 97L here. It's obviously not the best looking, but you can kind of see a clear area of low pressure within that kind of vorticity. So it's kind of really open, not really much convection necessarily close to the storm here. Few cloud cover and scattered conditions, or sorry, scattered thunderstorms associated within this trough here. And that's exactly why there's really not great chances of condition of this thing even forming within the next 2 days, which is why it's a rather low chance of it forming within the next 2 days or so. However, it will become more conducive in environment and most likely start getting structure as it goes further on later in the week here. But here's look at the overall low pressure, quite open, a good amount of convection towards the actual east of the actual low pressure, but near the actual LLC or near the actual low pressure, because obviously there is no LLC at this point, but near the actual low pressure itself here, you can kind of see a little bit of kind of flow here, a little bit of vorticity kind of trying to form here. But again, it does not really have a conducive environment until really later on in its track here. And once it actually gets towards the Bermuda region, that's where we have more favorable SSTs, a lot less upper level shear, and overall pretty big window here potential. Here's the actual 18Z track. So it is expected to start going basically west northwest to a very sharp west northwest turn to almost a northwest turn as it goes. Aiming for Bermuda, it looks like it's going to head for Bermuda, but it's most likely going to turn northeastward because of that Canadian ridge, which will be preventing that storm from going any further northward. Obviously, it's going to be pretty overall. Overall, going to be pretty big steering effect here, as it's not going to continue to go towards the west here because ridge, which is why there's such a big sharp turn to the northeast because of that steering pattern, because of that ridge, had an overall large effect on that storm steering. Let's now get a look at the overall intensity guidance, and obviously they remain quite high for 97L. And yesterday I said how typically the first assembles that jump on these early advisories are typically overreactive, or they just really jump on the things extremely early and they slowly slow down with an intensity. But this one actually, I think, could very well become quite reasonable. I wouldn't doubt this does become a hurricane out to sea here once it gets to a more conducive environment. I kind of compared this a little bit yesterday after my video with a few people to Paulette. For those who remember Paulette, yesterday was a hurricane out to sea, which is obviously a little bit closer to Bermuda. I think this will be like a Paulette type storm, as in a out to sea hurricane and taking a northeast turn like that. Obviously, I don't think it's gonna be Paulette strength, but I just think since that happened last year, I just thought I'd compare it to Paulette. But yeah, you can see a few models are still hinting towards a category 1 here, anywhere from probably 70 knots here, which is basically around 75-ish, maybe 75 knots. So a few getting into a category 2, a couple getting into a category 2. Category 2, I think it's still a pretty big jump here. But overall, I would not doubt this becomes Hurricane Ida. And then we have Tropical Storm Julian and maybe Hurricane Julian, who knows if it actually gets that strength in the Bay of Campeche and Gulf of Mexico. So I think the tropics are finally becoming more interesting here, and we're going to start seeing more hurricane potential with all the storms we're starting to see here as SSCs are increasing, ocean heat constantly increasing, and overall conditions as we get towards the peak season are at its best here, at its finest here. So I wouldn't rule out the possibility this does become a hurricane, and it does, obviously, that meaning kind of more of a sharper northeast turn, because the stronger it is, the more that ridge will have an effect with it. So I think that's overall going to be really good if it does get to that strength, because it will definitely stay away from Bermuda and actually probably turn further away from Bermuda if it were to get towards that strength here. But overall, I think these models are somewhat reasonable, having anywhere from 36 hours, which I still think is rather soon here. I'm really watching out for maybe around the next 60-ish to 72 hours for a landfall here. Or sorry, wait, hold on, not landfall. For getting to for it forming. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I had that really awkward pause. I was kind of like trying to just comprehend what I just said. I just said I was gonna go out to sea, and especially out to sea if it got to that strength. And then for some reason, I decided to say the word landfall. So no, I don't know why I said landfall. I think I just blanked out or something. But no, I meant to say 60-ish to 72 hours is the most reasonable for it getting to a tropical storm and forming, not landfall. So please, you guys never heard that. But let's now go get a look here at Invest 98L. So let's not get a look here at Invest 98L here on satellite. Although it looks rather a lot better than Invest 97L, the overall conditions for 98L are a lot worse, and obviously a lot bigger of a threat compared towards 97L. Right now, obviously, 97L is not going to form within the next 2 days for sure, just based on the conditions it's right now, which is obviously it's going to be encountering. And those conditions that 97L is going to be encountering will be what 90L will be encountering for days and days and days. So it's just going to have to just get cut off. And also, that part of the tropical wave that we actually have where 98L is a lot weaker than where 97L is, so it's a really great chance that 98L just suffocates. And even though it looks pretty good now, good amount of convection, overall cloud cover, and the overall low pressure basically around somewhat here, it's looking pretty good. I mean, you probably think this has a great chance of forming, but obviously, based on the conditions, specifically with the dry air, that's going to be the biggest threat in the future. The SAL, that's going to be the biggest factor and the biggest threat towards this system. And that's actually why the National Hurricane Center did decrease it from, was it 2040 at some point, and now it's 2030. And I wouldn't doubt to continue to decrease it for now, based on the trend. And no models and even little ensembles are picking up on it. And that obviously shows something about this system. Obviously, it's very unlikely that's going to form here. I mean, it still can't be ruled as a possibility, but the conditions just really don't look right. But overall, it's going to have convection here. I mean, it's not looking too shabby at this point. It's overall at a decent environment now. The only really big thing is that it's at the obviously at a low. It's very it's I guess close to the equator. I guess you could say that. I mean, it's not that close, but obviously it's got to be within 5 degrees north of the equator. It's getting really close to that point. Obviously, you can kind of see it's basically kind of now like 7 degrees north or 8 degrees north. So it's kind of really cutting it close here. That's kind of the only reason why it's not going to form now. Obviously, it's not really in a threat within drier now. It's obviously overall looking pretty good now. Good amount of convection, overall good low pressure compared to 97L. But in the future condition, once it actually goes further up west northwestward, and at some point northwestward, it's gonna just get absolutely just cut off and suffocated by that dry air. So here's now a look at the overall and tracks here in these symbols and what they're showing here. So looking at a kind of a west-northwest, maybe at the point getting towards the northwest turn, and then it kind of just goes like that. So it's going to be also an out-to-sea system, and most likely won't even form. But the big thing is, the big thing they take away from this is that it's not going to hit any land. Whether it forms or not, it's not going to hit land. And looking at 24 hours, I mean, there's really not much to really say. It's like it's not going to hit land. And it's going to be within this time frame, with this general region where it actually gets within a big threat of dry air and the threat of that tropical wave getting suffocated. And intensity, guys, though, has really kind of I want to say, stay rather the same. I think at this point, models have downtrended compared to yesterday, because I think yesterday we had a ton of models get into like a high-end tropical storm. Obviously, we didn't have that many symbols on it yesterday, but still a pretty big downtrend, with now only the DS HP there getting it to around 60-ish knots there, but the majority kind of have it not forming at all, or being rather weak at maybe 45, maybe 50 miles an hour or so. But again, I still doubt this system. I still doubt its invest in its potential. Can it still form? Maybe it can be very short-lived, but that's going to be max. Really, I don't see this becoming like an out-to-sea hurricane like the possibly 97L, or it being any threat to land, or even potential like the AOI down there in the Southern Caribbean. I think that's definitely the reason why the National Hurricane decreased it, and that's why the reasoning why models are still not jumping on this. So that's definitely a little bit take there from this system. Let's take a look at the overall conditions here before we actually get into the models. So here's one thing we want to keep a close eye on is obviously the SSCs. So obviously we can all agree the AOI down here in the southwestern Caribbean has the best condition water-wise, with kind of spawning within 28.5 degrees Celsius at this point. And then obviously in the future, it will most likely, if this track verifies, it's going to head into those really warm waters where Grace basically was on the urgent rapidly intensifying. It's going to basically get anywhere from 29 to 29.5 degrees Celsius, and who knows if it goes towards maybe Mexico, Texas, at some point in the future like that, or kind of like this, it's going to have nearly 30.5 degrees Celsius water. So from its whole path, where it is now to its potential landfall in the far future, it's going to have overall the best condition SSC-wise. For 97L, you can kind of see here, I believe 97L is kind of right here, so something like that. It's within around 27, maybe 27.5 degrees Celsius waters, and it's going to most likely head towards Bermuda, getting a little bit to warmer waters, nearly 28 or so, and that's going to obviously then kind of steer northeastward because of that Canadian high there. It's going to still be in somewhat very edge of the conducive waters. It's still going to be within over 26 degrees Celsius. And then for, let's see here, 98L, sorry, it's basically within the general vicinity right here. It kind of has moved a little bit further northward. Actually, I think it's kind of right here. It has moved a little further northward compared to yesterday, obviously. It's still within somewhat conducive waters, obviously. It's within anywhere from 26 degrees Celsius to 27. And then it's going to head into those cooler waters like here. And obviously, dry is going to be a pretty big threat as it steers further towards the west. Let's take a look at the overall ocean heat content. And once again, the AOI down here in the Southwest Caribbean has the best conditions for ocean heat content, with a really big thing to look at in the future path is, if it does verify, is that massive bubble there of extremely deep ocean heat content within between the Yucatan Peninsula and to areas near Cuba. This is definitely something to keep a close eye on. And obviously as well, if it does head for northern Mexico or the Texas coast, it will have another area of deepening and continuing to deepen ocean heat content right there in the western Gulf of Mexico, with numbers getting over 100 meters of 80 plus degrees water. So keeping it very overall interesting, something to keep a close eye on, specifically for the Western Caribbean AOI, and that's why it's my main focus. Even though it's not an invest yet, it's my main focus, because obviously it's gonna be the only invest, or the only AOI, because it's not an invest yet. The only AOI out of all three of these that are gonna hit land. Although it may not be the strongest, because obviously 97L could very well become a rather good hurricane if the models continue to trend like it is now. But this one's obviously gonna really aim for areas like obviously land, but not only areas that got not only land, but land that just got hit by Grace. Obviously, Grace almost became a Category 4 right before landfall, and it's probably going to head very close to where it may landfall in the Bay of Campeche here. It's as well going to be moving to the Yucatan Peninsula, where obviously it may landfall as well, right before it started rapidly intensifying as a, obviously, I think it hit Yucatan as a 60 mile an hour. No, I think it was 65. I think it hit Yucatan as either 60 or 65. So it's still going to be moving within the areas that got hit by a tropical storm, and then obviously gonna be really watching out what it does in the overall warm waters in the Bay of Campeche and Western Gulf of Mexico, and obviously the other two, specifically 97L, because it's 98L. I think I just really don't have much potential or even focus on that. But obviously, here's a look here at the overall kind of region where it's gonna head into the future, and really ocean heat gonna really remain under 60 meters. So it's not gonna be incredibly crazy, but obviously it's gonna be obviously a lot better than the 25 and below that it has right now. So 18Z has just kind of come in as far as being really neat. So let's actually get a look at what 18Z has to say. Now let me just say it's quite interesting here because I kind of got a brief view on it. So here's a look here at where we have the overall kind of low associated with the trough down here within that AOI down there in the Southern Caribbean. So within 42 hours or so, it'll be very close to Panama, bringing some overall flooding range across that general vicinity. And then there you see that two ridges, obviously the two obviously high pressures in there. We're going to be seeing Invest 97L still really open and overall quite disorganized. Not really does not have a moisture bubble yet. So who knows? Maybe this one down here could very well become hurt. This one very well could be Ida, and this one could be very well Julian. It's gonna be extremely close. So which ones will form? Which one of these two will form first? If I'm being completely honest, I think this one down here in the Caribbean will form first, considering it has a lot sooner development of a moisture bubble and more support, and as well overall less upper level shear. While this one down here or up there 97L has kind of the Canadian high there as well, two ridges. Still not going to be seeing too much really upper level shear, but it's just really going to be really a big threat toward the dry air, and it's going to really may delay its actual formation here. But at some point, they're going to be very similar pressure wise. 1003 for possibly, who knows, soon to be 99L. Within 96 hours, 1003, and then 1002 there for 97L. And it starts to go northeast, where that's when it's going to start really getting a ton of strength here. Obviously, there you see the Canadian high. There you see the high as well down here. That really strong ridge, and you're kind of really see a strong ridge, kind of really steering the storm up like towards the northeast here instead of it going further westward. And obviously, this high pressure is going to really kind of keep it going like this back to the north. So it's obviously going to have a pretty good alley of good condition. That's exactly why it's going to rather get quite strong here. 990 millibars. This one could very well become a hurricane. And I wouldn't even doubt if this one down here in the Western Caribbean could very well become a hurricane, if I'm being completely honest. And then this one, at this point, we're going to be seeing 982 there for 97L, and then 990 millibars in the central Gulf of Mexico, north of the Bay of Campeche, and then getting up to 967 millibars there as it goes to the western Gulf of Mexico. And again, we just saw there's some overall really good ocean heat content there in the western Gulf of Mexico, really as well getting really strong 976 millibars there for 97L. So we could very well see two hurricanes. I know this is just one run for the GFS getting this one down here in the Western Caribbean that strong. However, there has been a lot of consistency within probably a high-end tropical storm and low in Category 1. So I'm not going to rule out the possibility of a hurricane for this one down here in the Western Caribbean. So I wouldn't doubt we get two more hurricanes before September 1st here. But what the GFS wants to have is absolutely just mentally want to have a 952 millibar landfall for Texas, with it getting as low as 942 millibars. I mean, I wouldn't doubt if it does get to a hurricane, but I'm not sure it's actually that strong for them. And just look what they have, the GFS here, just an absolute mental storm here. I'm not going to throw out the H word, but I think we all know what I would compare this to with the stalling part. Because look at that, 942 millibars. I mean, that's just absolutely mental. Look at that 10-meter winds here. I mean, that's absolutely mental. Probably like over 100 knots within that storm there. I mean, I wonder what 850 millibars is showing. I mean, that's just absolutely mental, getting over probably 125 knots on 850 millibars. All right, 850 HPA height. But overall, I mean, it's a pretty good conducive environment for both these systems. Obviously, I think that the one in the Western Caribbean will very easily become a 99L quite soon here, and I wouldn't doubt if it even forms first. So keep an overall quite close eye on both of these, 97L and that one down the Western Caribbean, while GFS still struggles to have 98L form. Here's another look here at the 18Z icon. I've actually not gotten a chance to actually look at the icon before the video, so I'm actually going to be learning it with you guys. So here they have 98L, there's 97, or that AOI, and then there is 97L. As we not get within here the next 24 hours or so, still 1,007 millibars there for 98L, and really disorganized there with 97L. And then we actually have the icon as they're taking the AAY and the Caribbean very far north, actually, while the GFS has it kind of going very close to Panama and Costa Rica. Icon has it kind of really doing like a kind of an Elsa somewhat position near Elsa. And then you can see the icon kind of still has that triangle there of those low pressures. I mean, the icon's not really giving up as fast as what GFS is doing with the 98L. But there you see 995 millibars within 81 hours there for 97L, and then having obviously the one in the Western Caribbean continue to thrive, or at least try to thrive there. It actually kind of goes north of Cancun, and then we had the icon. Icon really loved on the rest of Main Storm, but the fact they want to have 97L get as low as 963 millibars is absolutely crazy, and the icon as well getting that one in the Western Caribbean into the 990s before heading towards Texas. So I think we have to really watch out for Texas here for the next few days here. I mean, it continues to have a northern trend here. At first, it was kind of near Grace Landfall, and now it's kind of like it may go north of Cancun. It may get very close to Cuba. So I think we have to really watch out for this general vicinity. If I'm being completely honest, I think this is a really big watch zone, including Louisiana. And I think we have to keep a close eye on it for sure. CMC. This is a look at the 12Z here, and as well, they really struggle to have 98L form. Actually, they have dissipating fashion than GFS. But obviously, here's a look here, 991 millibars for 78 hours. So we're kind of having some consistency that this could very well become a low-end category 1 as really late as the next 3 days or so. And then having the AOI and the Caribbean actually go north of Yucatan and actually do very similar track towards what the icon is showing here. And then CMC wants to have the 97L get as low as 972 millibars. So really a ton of consistency there. And then CMC wants to have a 971 millibar landfall for Texas. So I think we have to really watch out for a pretty big threat ahead for Southern Texas. I know it's really far out. I know it's really, it hasn't really been a really good trend, but there's been extreme consistency within these models. CMC, European icon GFS, with having a storm either in Texas or the Bay of Campeche. But the strength is becoming a little bit more consistent. So I think if this continues by tomorrow afternoon, we have to really keep a close eye on for like Brownsville and Corpus Christi and even Houston. I really have to keep a close eye on that general vicinity. See what the European has here for vorticities, so we can get an idea of what they want to have within these systems. And as well, European actually having something going for Louisiana, and obviously extremely strong there for 97L. Let's go look at the overall conditions. Shear wise, 200 millibars, or 200, 850, I believe, what we're looking at. Yeah, 200. Oh yeah, 250 millibars is what we're looking at. So there you kind of see a tut right there near the Bahamas, bringing a good amount of shear there across the Caribbean. But right now, where we have the low pressure for the AOI is just south of all that shear. So it should be just on a tight and thin ice as well. Looking overall, there was a little bit of shear there, kind of in the lower levels there near the low pressure of 98L. And then we're not going to be seeing extreme amount of shear there near the low pressure of 97L. You can kind of see it's going to be right on the very edge there of a developing trough to the south. And there you see it's going to kind of really be affected by that trough. Actually, you kind of see a trough kind of building around it. And then we kind of have obviously a ridge right here and another ridge kind of up here or something like that. And obviously it's going to really bring in some shear really close to the actual low pressure itself. It's going to really not going to be much in the actual upper level, so shouldn't be really seeing a big threat of any tilting vortexes or anything like that. And then see that really strong Canadian high here, that really strong ridge. I mean, it's like a really strong Rossby wave. You can kind of see a clear Rossby wave, kind of just like that. That's going to really push that storm towards the southeast here, while you have this trough and then a ridge down here. It's going to keep it going that way, so it kind of has an overall valley of where it's going to go. You can kind of see it kind of follows that path there, but that's a really strong ridge and trough there. There you see the high pressure up there, high pressure up here, and then trough down here. I mean, that is a really strong part of the Rossby wave. I mean, that's just absolutely mental. As well as now look, you actually forgot about the AY down there. So you can kind of see, looks like we may see an upper level anticyclone kind of develop. You can kind of see that diverging shear kind of going all around that actual low pressure, diverging away. So it looks like we may have a upper level anticyclone there, which we actually get a better idea at 200 millibars. But overall, we're going to be seeing a pretty strong ridge developing there. Actually, you can kind of see that ridge kind of up here, like that ridge, and then a drop dipping the jet stream there. So overall, going to be seeing as well potential ULOC to actually provide more conducive environment ahead of the AOI down there. So let's now get a look at the overall 200 millibar. And you guys, there's really little, actually almost to no, really upper level shear there, where we have the AOI down there. We have a little bit there of upper level shear towards 98L, kind of anywhere from 30-ish knots or so, but overall not too crazy. And then we're not going to really have much upper level shear necessarily near 97L, but there will be a little bit kind of increasing here as it goes further northward. And that's going to really be the reason why it's not going to really get its good chance to develop until within the next 3 or 4 days or so. And there you see that really strong, obviously, ridge up there. The Canadian ridge is going to be really high amounts of shear than the upper levels, with not too much upper level shear there where the actual low pressure is for 97L. It's going to be, at this point, it will weaken once it actually gets close to the actual upper level shear. So shouldn't really be a big threat. And last but not least, let's now get a look at the overall dryer and how much dryer there is. And obviously, a pretty big factor to why 97L is not going to thrive right now, and it's not thriving at all, is because how open and how disorganized that wave is. I mean, it's really disorganized and dry. I can easily get into it right now. We have a good amount of moisture within the new AOI down there near South America. Going to be seeing a good really moisture wave off South America. That's going to provide a really good and conducive environment. That's going to obviously continue as it goes towards Texas and the Gulf of Mexico, and then we're not going to start really getting that organized moisture bubble and overall closed off low until a lot later within 97L, and so really probably maybe the weekend here. So it's going to really be a big factor to why it's going to maybe hold off within the formation. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys later.